As a teenager during the late 1970s and early 1980s, Paul Jenkins lived through the political, economic, and social aspects brought to the nation within the presidencies of both Carter, a Democrat, and Ronald Reagan, a Republican. Full of successes and failures, the lives of the nation at home were characterized by economic struggles, redefining political policies, and a rise in conservatism. In terms of the political atmosphere of the late 1970s, it was evident that Jimmy Carter struggled to implement multiple beneficial actions during his presidency. Although he prosperously achieved the Camp David Accords to end Israeli-Egyptian disputes, he was unable to negotiate for the hostages' release during the Iran hostage crisis. Besides political actions in implementing détente, he encouraged worldwide support for human rights issues and diverted from anti-communist policies. As for Ronald Reagan's administration, the Strategic Defense Initiative strived to protect the United States, and his new right/Reaganomics system was designed to allow the nation to prosper economically. Continuing with economic aspects, Reagan truly believed that the government is not the solution to our problems, government is the problem, which led to the rise of supply-side tax cuts, domestic budget cuts, and reductions in the role of the federal government, which greatly affected the world at home. While the unemployment rate did decline, the wealthy communities ultimately became wealthier and the poor communities became much poorer due to trickle-down economics theory, which was unsuccessful overall. However, being a teen during Reagan's administration provided many more benefits than the high unemployment, inflation, and effects of an energy crisis during Carter's administration. The nation at home redefined their social and cultural beliefs throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s. For instance, as television shows, movies, technology, and iconic artists stole the hearts and minds of the teens, the Silicon Valley of California became the home of the American technological economy. Also, young urban professionals, referred to as yuppies, were the new generation of hippies and counterculture. However, there was much more rebellious behavior and widespread use of drugs. The new right played the role of opposing abortion, the Equal Rights Amendment, homosexuality, and other social issues during the time as part of a conservative movement. In terms of religious factors, conservatives such as Jerry Falwell and the moral majority represented the opposition, while anti-feminist groups opposed the Equal Rights Amendment, which was advocated by participants in the women's liberation movement. As for key figures during the civil rights movement, Muhammad Ali was greatly admired and defended by the public for resisting white domination and advocating black power. Due to the rise of environmental issues around the United States, such as the Love Canal incident, there was widespread advocacy for the Environmental Protection Agency. Evidently, the late 1970s and the early 1980s were full of increases in advocacy groups that varied from conservative to extremely liberal in economic developments that either degraded or strengthened the national economy. Paul Jenkins' life as a teen during both the Carter and Reagan administrations involved significant transitions in ideals, trends, and movements. What do you remember about family vacations?
Family vacations for me were the entire summer. We would pack up the truck and the trailer and we would spend the entire summer traveling.
What board, arcade, or video games did you play?
I remember playing a lot of Monopoly. Video games, there was a Star Wars video game that was really popular because Star Wars had just come out.
Were you competitive?
Not really, no, not at all.
What big historic events do you recall?
The bicentennial was a big one for us in 1976. I had to think about it.
Can you describe that?
Well, it was just a huge thing for the whole country. Locally, the blizzard of '78 was a huge one. I remember that very well. My house almost got destroyed and we had to evacuate. Yeah, it was a mess.
I remember that. What big personal events do you recall?
Probably the biggest one for me was graduating from high school. My father never graduated from high school till he was an adult, so it was something in my family that was very important. So in my house, you were considered nothing until you graduated. So that was probably the biggest one.
What do you remember about fashions?
The biggest thing in fashion was bell bottom pants. All my pants were bell bottoms, and I thought they was cool until one day I heard my friends talking about my pants, and I never wore them again.
That's so sad.
Yeah, but you know, at least I found out the truth.
How did you spend your summers?
Well, like I said earlier, when I was younger, I would spend my summers traveling up and down the East Coast. We would pack up the day school ended, and we would not come back until 2 days before school started. When I was older, in high school, I spent my summers in Maine building my parents' house that they moved from Situate to there
Did you have
when
any
I
summer
graduated.
jobs?
No, that was it. I worked for my father.
What type of music or bands did you listen to?
I listened to rock music. I think the first album, a record, you know what that is? I bought was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Um, I hitchhiked all the way down to Situate Harbor to buy it, and yeah, that was the first album.
Do you still listen to that?
Sometimes.
Where did you grow up or live?
Oh, I grew up in Situate, which is 2 towns south of here. I lived in a little house with my mother and father and my 6 siblings. We only had 3 bedrooms in the house, so my parents had 1 bedroom, and then the upstairs we split in half, and the boys lived on one half and the girls lived on the other. So it was a little crowded.
Did you walk to school? Did you drive to school?
I took the bus or I ran to school. I would, yeah, it was like 4 miles, and I would run every day, back and forth. Good exercise.
What type of car did you drive?
I didn't drive a car until I bought a car. We only had one car, so we were never allowed to drive it. My parents, well, we had 2 cars. My mother had a car, my father had a car, but they needed their cars, so we were never allowed to drive. So I did end up getting my license, but I was probably 19 when I got my license, and that's when I bought my first Dodge Charger.
Where did you go on dates?
The movie theater was probably really the only place other than or hanging out around the house, but usually the movies or the mall was something else. You'd walk around the mall. I don't know, kind of boring.
What movies did you see?
Back then, I'm trying to remember. Star Wars. The first Star Wars was a big thing.
What did you do in your free time?
Um, I played. I played with my brothers. Not my sisters were older, but my 3 brothers. We would spend a lot of time in the yard riding bikes. We lived on Musquashkett Pond, so we would build rafts and actually go out on the pond and have fun doing that. We would take canoes and canoe all around the pond. I can remember one day I got my brother to jump out of the boat, and there was a big rock in the middle of the pond, and he jumped on the rock, and I paddled back to shore and left him out there till my father came home from work and screamed and yelled, and I had to go back and get him. But it was fun.
Lesson learned. What new consumer items changed your life?
I think the microwave was probably the biggest one. Cell phones hadn't really come out yet. Even cordless phones for houses weren't even out. But the microwave was definitely something that changed our lives. That we could just, throw some popcorn in there and have a snack real quick, or a microwave TV dinner. TV dinner is what they were called, not microwave. What were your favorite TV shows?
The Brady Bunch.
Yes, I enjoyed that one too.
You liked the Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, but you liked the Partridge Family.
I did like the Partridge Family. I loved Happy Days.
Happy Days.
Happy Days.
Happy Days.
Laverne and
Laverne and
Shirley.
Shirley.
They agreed on something.
Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. Taxi.
Oh, Taxi was a good one. Mm-hmm. That's with your guy from
The Love Boat and Fantasy Island.
Who were your sports heroes?
Muhammad Ali was a big one. I can remember having pictures of him punching Kenny Norton in the face all over my room. That was huge. And hockey was a big one. The Bruins had won the Stanley Cup in the early 70s a couple of times. So Bobby Orr and Derek Sanderson. Those were, I think that was pretty much it. Baseball, I don't know. I don't remember following baseball, but I know I was a fan. My generation.
How would you describe your generation?
Respectful. I think that kids back then were a lot more respectful to their parents, teachers. You would never ever get a phone call from a teacher to a parent, because if you went home to that, you knew that you were in trouble. And my parents never ever called my teachers either. It was kind of like, this is school, this is the house. You do what your teacher says. The teacher's always right. That
But a
doesn't
more
seem to
simple
be the.
generation. Sorry, I have to ask. It's more simple. No electronics. You have to talk.
That's true. We did have to learn how to talk and dial a phone.